All right, so switching gears into a different topic, let's talk about aggression. So, we're building off our previous discussion on regulating emotions. What happens when children experience intense negative emotions like anger or jealousy, and they don't have an adapted strategy to regulate them? So, they might engage in something maladaptive like aggression, which is behavior aimed at harming another, either physically or psychologically. So, what are the types of aggression that we see children display? First is physical aggression. This might be the first thing that comes to mind when we think of the word aggression. It's things like hitting, kicking, pushing, like it implies, it's physical acts of aggression. So, very pretty straightforward. Moving into the next one, verbal aggression. This would involve things like name calling or teasing. So, again, as the phrase implies, aggression through verbal means. So, using your words to harm somebody. Lastly, we have one called relational aggression. This one, maybe we don't know right away what this might mean. So, what this involves is harming someone's friendship through something like gossiping or excluding them from group activities. That would be a relational aggression. So, it has to do with the child's relations with others and their reputation is on the line. So it's more of an indirect form of aggression, but can still be very harmful. So those are the three types of aggression we will cover. Now let's talk about what are the influences that lead to aggression. So let's first talk about biological influences, kind of the evolutionary factors. So if we look at the animal kingdom, all animals display aggression to some extent. This suggests that aggression might be an adaptive function of evolution. So it stems from competing with others for resources of survival and reproduction. We can also look at the establishment of hierarchies and how this diminishes the need for aggression once hierarchies are established. So, for example, if we look at puppies, in the first few weeks of life, puppies are constantly rumbling around and nipping at each other. And it continually gets more serious as they grow older and get more physically developed, turns into actual biting that causes harm to each other. So it's more severe aggression toward each other. Once it reaches more serious levels, hierarchies start being formed. Some puppies become dominant, some become subordinate. So once these hierarchies form, the dominant puppies realize they don't need to attack anymore to get their way. They can just threaten other puppies with a small growl or something like that. So the frequency of fighting actually diminishes. And this occurs in many other species, is formation of hierarchies, which actually diminishes the level of aggression within the group. We even see this in young children. So young children, when there is aggression on the playground, hierarchies start forming. Children start to display aggression only to the children on the same level as them, where it's safe or equal to do so. So it does kind of seem to mirror in young children in some ways. So that's the biological influences of aggression. What about social and cultural influences? So another explanation is that people learn to behave aggressively because it's socially adaptive in their families, peer groups, or overall culture. So, what might happen is children might observe aggressive behaviors in others and imitate it, or maybe they get rewarded for it somehow. Maybe the context of a social situation permits aggression. For example, when a parent's marital relationship includes aggression, children are more likely to behave aggressively themselves. That would go back to the observation and imitation. Or aggressive behavior might be rewarded by parents. And this is not like they're going out and buying a gift for being aggressive, but it's something like laughing at the child, the form of aggression, thinking it's funny, or just paying more attention to the child. This could even be negative attention, because sometimes attention is attention. It's what the child is seeking, whether it's negative or positive, it's giving the child what they are seeking due to some lack in some other area of their social emotional development. So these are potential explanations in terms of observation and context. Social and cultural expectations can also play a role. This might explain the gender differences that we see in aggression. Boys tend to be more aggressive than girls in a variety of contexts. This could stem from how boys are socialized. For example, many boys are taught that it's not masculine to talk about their feelings. So they may resort to displays of aggression to express their feelings instead. It's just one example of the social cultural influences. We also see a decline in aggression as children get older. Now, this might stem from the fact that aggression is deemed socially unacceptable. And as they get older, get more experience with the world around them, they start learning these social rules, and we see this decline in aggression. Now, what about emotional and cognitive influences? So, how children feel and think about social situations might also provoke aggressive responses. For example, how does a child interpret a social situation based on their world experience? If they have an immature understanding of how people's emotions, goals, and behaviors all link together, they might misinterpret a social situation, which can lead to an aggressive response. One study found that children with less advanced knowledge of emotions and their expressions were more likely to behave aggressively toward peers. Also, frustrating or unpleasant situations, they obviously bring negative feelings to the surface. A child's temperament or even their past social experiences and even their past traumas will impact what the child does with these feelings. Do they have a fight or a flight impulse? If they have a flight impulse, they might have an escape related reaction, leaving the situation. If they have a fight impulse, however, they might be more inclined to be aggressive. So thinking of it in terms of trauma responses, fight or flight, how do we respond to unpleasant situations? And also just cognitive abilities in general can play a role. So if the child has the cognitive ability to step back and think about their consequences, they might be able to overcome their negative feelings and redirect their behavior. This goes back to self-regulation. Those are just some ways that emotional and cognitive factors could influence aggression. What helps to reduce aggression? Reducing family aggression is a starting point. So we talked about how family members can be models for aggressive behaviors. So if family members actively work to reduce their own aggressive behaviors, their child's aggression can potentially be controlled better as well. Sitting down and helping kids see how aggression hurts others can also be helpful. So we may think it's almost impossible to hold a rational conversation with a 3-year-old who just grabbed a toy from their peer. And in some ways that might be true, but they do understand and absorb more than we might think. So making this effort to level with them and discuss how aggression hurts other people has actually been found to reduce aggression. So it has been found to be a helpful strategy. Sitting down and reasoning with them, of course, after their behavior, if it's a big meltdown or tantrum, something like that. Also, helping kids find nonviolent resolutions can also be helpful. They might be very caught up in their emotions and unable to regulate themselves or to reason properly. So again, it can be helpful to sit down and reason with them about more adaptive strategies to cope with their dilemma in the future, like sharing or taking turns, for example. This has also been shown to reduce aggression in young children, helping them find other resolutions that aren't violent, that aren't aggressive. But like we said earlier in the day, if a child is having a meltdown or a tantrum, we should pause and wait until they calm down before resulting to these things, trying to reason with them. So that finishes up our section on aggression. Thank you for joining, everyone, and I'll see you in our next stop.